All right, live stream activate. Ed. You know, this is the longest my beard has ever been. And I gotta say,
Gibbons.
I never realized how much beards could get in the way of everyday life. I'm committed to.
Oh, if you've added up,
you know, this is the longest my beard has ever been.
Right.
And I gotta say,
Gibbons.
I never realized how much beards could get in the way of everyday life. Yeah, just doing little things like putting a shirt on. The beard has to get caught up in the collar, you know?
I don't know if all of my growth from puberty now equals that much. It just is not a thing for me.
Well, this is 9 months. So I started at the beginning of the year, actually a week before the beginning of the year. So 9 months. I did trim it a couple of times, a little starker than I wanted to, so it could be longer. But I'm going to give it through the year. I'm committed to going all the way through 2017 without shaving, but I can't live with this. It's going to have to go somewhere. I may keep the beard, but shorten it, or I may just go back to the goatee.
You know, dye it white, and it's the perfect Santa Claus link.
Well, actually, that's kind of what I was thinking. Yeah, is see if I can play Santa this year. Trouble with me playing Santa is I can't wear that suit. I would just be melting in that suit.
You'd be Santa the Muslim terrorist.
Oh, nice. Do I look Middle Eastern? Really?
Abu Akbar. I don't know.
I don't know.
No, you could lose the moustache. You would.
That's true. They don't ever have mustaches, do they? It's just beards.
Mm-mm.
My neighbor across the street is a Jewish rabbi, and so he's all about the beard. Every time he sees me, he's like, "Beard looks good, man. Looks good." I don't quite have it pointy enough for him. You know, their style is that point right under the chin.
Right.
All right. Anything we need to talk about before we start recording?
Nope.
I have not read any of these articles, Seth. But then again, that's the amount of preparation I usually put into everything we do. So
I did glance over them again a few minutes ago. So, you know, I mean, come on. I mean, we're probably not even going to get to them anyway because they're news links. We're going to end up talking about something else for the whole show anyway. So come on, quit teasing me.
yeah,
We'll
all those things you said are true. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to start recording.
Recordings activated.
Oh yeah, hang on.
We could talk about this email from
There we
Nathan
go.
for a while. I'm interested to see where that goes.
Mhm.
All right. Live stream is streaming. Chat room is chatting. I guess we're ready to go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the GeekRant, episode 305. Maybe just a little evil. Recorded October 8th, 2017, and brought to you by Element OP Productions. ElementOP.com. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the only place on the internet where geeks rant. I am your host, Mark, sometimes known as the Sultan of the Soapbox Cockerel, and joining me this week, as always, are your two stalwart co-hosts, Seth, the Gooey Kid Anderson, and Miles, the Aussie Wakeham. Hello, gentlemen.
Hey, Mark, and welcome back to all of the fine folks in Opie Land. We sure have missed y'all.
Yeah, we skipped one. Sorry.
I wasn't really feeling sick last week, but I was having some major allergy issues, and I didn't think you'd want to listen to an hour and a half of me talking like this. So I decided not to do a show. So my fault. But I am now back in my full voice.
Here's the thing, Mark. Last week, you could have appealed for money and say, pay, you know, and then people would have just felt bad, and we could have raked in the dough.
Or I could have said something like, "This is my dedication." Even sounding like this, I do a show. I don't know. Maybe that would have worked. For less than the cost of a cup of coffee a day, you could buy me new hardware. Especially if it's Starbucks coffee. Man, $5 a day, I'm in.
Sure, yeah. We give them all kinds of exclusive content.
So
I'm surprised. Okay, this Starbucks thing, right? I'm sorry, but I gotta throw this out there. How did society get addicted to Starbucks when there was coffee long time before that?
Marketing. All about marketing.
It's psychosis, right? This is not they've got really great coffee or they put cocaine in the coffee or something. It's like psychosis.
Well, Starbucks, I mean, honestly, their coffee among coffee is just is good, but it's not. I mean, there's gas station coffee that's just as good. What Starbucks did was the first one to really market the atmosphere, the Apple style coffee environment. You were not buying coffee, you were buying a lifestyle. You are a certain type of person if you were seen at this location purchasing our coffee.
Hipster.
Yeah.
I can only say that.
But it's been around longer than the hipsters.
Yeah, that's true.
So now we know where the hipsters came from.
Right.
So it's all Starbucks' fault. Somebody could travel back in time and prevent the first Starbucks from opening. Who knows how awesome the world would be now.
Baristas with iPhones.
One of my favorite mockumentaries is Best in Show. It's about people who are into dog shows. It's a Christopher Guest film. And two of the characters there, they're the classic late 90s yuppie. And they're telling their story in that, mock interview style. And it's like, well, we met at Starbucks. Well, not the same Starbucks. I was at one Starbucks, and he was at a Starbucks across the street. And they ran out of the mocha frappiato that I like, and so I went across the street. And it was just that line right there. Hey, I was at one, and he was at another one across the street, because that is so real. There's Starbucks everywhere.
Yeah, and how sad is it? I don't know. I guess it's not sad if you like to be underemployed and you like to stand in line to get something that you can get without standing in line almost any place else in the world.
Yeah, walk into any car dealership and they'll give you free coffee just to get you there. Anyway, so last week was my kids' fall break. Our school, I've mentioned it before, has this thing where they do a week off every 6 weeks and then a very short summer. So this was their fall break. And I try to take that week off every year with them. I don't usually take any time, maybe a day or two, but usually nothing extended during the summer. So we do that fall break, and that's a good week for travel. It's usually the third or fourth week in September. So it's a good opportunity to go to those places that other people normally go in the summer. It's still warm enough, particularly in the South, where you can still swim and go to the beach and all that sort of stuff. This year we didn't do that. We just did a staycation because I don't have money, and we went to the zoo and did that sort of stuff. But one of the things that we did Thursday, which I think was responsible for me not doing a show Sunday, and also the thing I'm about to talk about, we went to the North Georgia State Fair, and so my friends of you listening in Texas think county fair. They call it a state fair, but it's about the size and scope of a county fair. There's a midway, and there's 3 or 4 shows, and there was a 3-foot rat and the sideshow geek and that sort of stuff. But it was a fair. It was nice, but it was nothing even close to the Texas State Fair. But while we were there, I was sitting on the bottom level of a set of aluminum bleachers, so 18 inches at the most off the ground. Those things are pretty low. My daughter was sitting behind me, and unbeknownst to her, she kicked my phone off of the bench, and so it fell a scant 18 inches. It wrapped in a case, but it happened to fall exactly face down on the pavement, and this is what happened to it. And for those of you who aren't watching, the front screen is completely obliterated. And I don't really mind, glass broken. I've worked with broken phones, but it's so broken that the capacitive touch doesn't work anymore. It's not even a capacitance measure anymore. So it was completely useless, and I had to had to come home and pull my old Nexus 5 out of the drawer and use it and remember all the reasons that it's in the drawer. So I very quickly purchased a new device, and that device was the OnePlus 5, which, as you look at it, it looks like an iPhone. They all kind of look like iPhones these days. A single capacitive fingerprint sensor, so I use my pinky finger. Nothing happened. Oh, and then it wakes up. Yeah, it proved me wrong. It's not supposed to do that. Yeah, but then I use my regular finger, and it unlocks. That's it. Yeah, it woke up, but it didn't unlock. Yeah, that was it. That made me feel better. So, yeah, pinky finger wakes it up, but it's got the lock screen, right? And then I use one of the fingers that I had there and it locks up. So, super fast capacitive touch fingerprint sensor. I've only had it a few days. I got it last Wednesday. So, Wednesday, Thursday. This is Sunday. So, 3.5-ish days. My initial impressions, really nice phone. $475 for the 64 gig version, 6 gigs of RAM. You don't get a 6 gigs of RAM anywhere on any phone. It's super fast. Aluminum case, really solid, super thin. So thin it's actually uncomfortable in the hand. Like it feels better with a case on it in my big catcher's mitt size hands. I hear you asking a question, Seth.
I was gonna make the comment. Oh. My laptop has 8 gigs.
Right. Yeah. It flies. It's the fastest phone I've ever used. And it is 7:39 p.m. I took it off of the charger at about 6:45 this morning. Care to guess what my battery level is right now? No charger has touched it throughout the day. Took it to church. It's my Bible at church. I watched the Cowboys game on it for about 3 hours this afternoon while there was some other stuff going on. Take a guess at my battery percentage.
41.
I was going to say 20.
68%.
Whoa.
13 hours later, with heavy use, I'm still at 68%. It's possessed. There is a demon inside there that recharges the battery when I'm not looking. That's the only explanation I have.
Does it got a micro SD card where you can add more storage to the thing?
It is not storage upgradable, no. But they make models up to 256 gigs, so you can get lots on it. But 64 is fine for me. My last one was 32, and I just don't put a lot of stuff on my phone. Everything's in the cloud these days. So I just got to say, if you want a new phone, the OnePlus 5, I honestly can't find much bad to say about it. So,
you got the rapid charge thing on there?
It's a proprietary thing. It's called Dash. It's not the quick charge like other people use. It goes from 0 to 80% in 30 minutes without heating the phone. The problem with that is the charger is proprietary. You can only buy it from OnePlus, and the cable is proprietary as well. You have to buy their charger and their cable. But honestly, with this kind of battery life, you just don't need it. I plug it in when I go to bed at night and unplug it in the morning, and it's just not a thing.
That is a pretty sweet phone for that price. That is a really sweet phone.
Yeah, and it came to me, and I paid extra for expedited shipping. That extra was like $6. And I ordered it Friday morning and got it Monday. So
it's an unlocked phone. You're not tied to a carrier or anything like that?
Correct. It's GSM only, so you're not going to use it on Sprint or Verizon. But any of your GSM carriers, Sprint. I think Sprint does have some CDM. I think you can do voice but no data. That's it on Sprint. But T-Mobile, AT&T, any global carrier, any European or Asian carrier is going to have GSM. It's 2 SIMs, so you can put 2 cards in it, have 2 numbers on one phone.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah. Sweet.
So I wasn't intending to do a review of a phone. I wasn't intending to buy a phone. But I just couldn't live without a phone, and I couldn't live with that Nexus 5 anymore. I've grown beyond it.
So here's how you spend this, Mark. Because when you went to the fair that broke your phone, you have used that in the course of your business of podcasting. So your whole trip to the fair is now a business write-off for you.
Which honestly is almost as much as the phone. Fairs are not cheap.
Right. And all of the food you ate
Right.
there, you were entertaining clients, and, you had a partner to help you with this. So all of that is like, all of that's business expense now.
Let's see if I can run this down. It was 2 lemonades, 2 soft drinks, 2 corn dogs, 2 soft pretzels. No, 3 corn dogs and 2 soft pretzels. $48.
So in fare, that's about $75.
$48 for that.
48.
Yeah. It was a bargain. It's just amazing. I call it fareconomics. It's the economics of fares. Once you walk in,
Right.
Everything changes. But I wanted to show you, because I happened to notice it sitting beside me here. I don't know. Again, for the 2 people who watch the video, you'll get this. So this is my previous Moto X that I have often referred to as a thin phone. This is my new One Plus right beside it. It's about half the thickness of it.
So
With way
did you
better
look
battery
into
life.
just getting the screen replaced on the Moto?
I didn't. It was just an excuse to get a new phone. Let's just be honest. And the Moto X was,
We need no excuse.
it was about 3 years old. It was getting time. So maybe not, maybe 2 years. Anyway, so that's about that. The only other one thing I want to talk about, I talked about it last time we were here, the Orville, the Seth MacFarlane Star Trek kind of parody, but not really thing. I said then it couldn't decide what it wanted to be, and I wasn't sure if I liked it or not. The most recent episode, it's either 3 or 4, maybe 5, somewhere. It's still early in. Was a very serious, very Star Trek episode. I mean, it was Star Trek: The Next Generation season 1, maybe 2. There were a couple of dick jokes, but for the most part, they played it straight, and it was a really good episode. And so now I just don't have any idea what I think about the Orville. Just when I was about ready to write them off, they come out with a solid sci-fi episode. So I really just don't know.
Oh, sorry, I can't help you there.
Yeah. All right.
No, I haven't watched it either yet.
So Seth, you saw a movie that I haven't seen, Dunkirk.
Yeah, and I will give you my 1-sentence review of Dunkirk. It is a bad telling of an awesome story. So I had such high hopes for Dunkirk, but they were true to the action, sort of, but they were so true to the action, they missed the spirit of the story. And I mean, it looked historically accurate. I didn't notice anachronistic stuff or anything like that, but it wasn't, technically wise, it was a well-made film, but I wouldn't say it was a good movie. So I was kind of bummed by that.
That's the first non-5-star review I've heard of that movie.
Oh, well, I think anyway, I won't go into all the reasons I didn't care for it, but it was a lackluster effort at telling what was truly a miraculous event. They made it just this thing, and they chose to focus on small individual stories to kind of tell the overarching theme, and they missed the overarching theme, and they tried to throw it in at the end, and it did not work as a movie for me. But I know more history than the average person, so the average person might, they wouldn't know the stuff that I can't forget or I haven't forgotten yet. So
was it better than Pearl Harbor?
I was able to enjoy Pearl Harbor. There was enough action and stuff that I could, enjoy that part. So it was, no, for me, no.
Wow. Because I really didn't like Pearl Harbor at all.
Yeah.
As a student of history, I didn't like it.
Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, I don't know. I just, like I say, Pearl Harbor was almost like we're just stealing the name and location and we're going to tell our own story, and we're not claiming to be historically accurate. And Dunkirk was like trying to be historically accurate, but they focus so much on the details, they miss the theme. There's an old saying, penny wise, pound foolish, detail wise, theme lacking was my how I felt about the movie. So,
all right, that's a fair review. Miles, have you seen either of those?
I was going to see it. But now maybe I'll wait for the DVD. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I would be curious as to what y'all's opinion was on it versus mine. So I have eclectic tastes in movies that not a huge overlap with any one person. So.
Well, this is not a movie that's going to have a traditional Hollywood ending, though, right? Because it's a sad ending.
Well, they made the ending. Well, I mean, no, it's not really a sad ending because, in the history of Dunkirk, spoiler alert, it's based on a true event. They were able to evacuate pretty much all of the English Expeditionary Force across the channel. So, in that sense, it was a great thing. And really, the miracle at Dunkirk is really the one thing that prevented the invasion of Britain. If the army had been captured there would have been nothing to stop Hitler and the Nazis from, coming across the aisle, and it would have been civilians fighting them versus over 250,000 soldiers fighting on their home territory. So, so no, it doesn't end in heartbreak because that's the miracle is that they're able to get them home.
Yeah, this is essentially an evacuation film, or at least the story of Dunkirk is an evacuation story.
Yeah, and an evacuation / retreat story. And I mean, so in that sense, it's true to the history, but they just, I don't know. I was not a fan of their telling of the story.
Another thing that was a little less true to history is the fact that this is the year of The Running Man.
Yes, the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie Running Man, which 80s glory, and I watched it today because it was a better choice than the football games that were available. And okay, 80s cheese fest, it holds up in that aspect, but I realized at the beginning it was set in the year 2017. I was like, oh my gosh, this is the year of Running Man. So, you can look and you can kind of see how our television could be headed towards that direction. And, so it's not like a 1984 type thing, but it was an interesting, how does 2017 compare with the 2017 of Running Man?
If somebody tried to make a reality television show where convicted violent criminals were killed as part of the show, I honestly think there'd be an audience for it. There would be protests, but there'd be an audience for it too.
I think there would be.
Yeah, I think the extra chromosome Trumpers would be all over that. I really do.
I mean, I would love to say no, they wouldn't, but I wouldn't pay to watch it. But if there were some Applebee's or something that had it on, I'm like,
I love that you went with Applebee's. That's great.
Applebee's or some bar, Chili's, whatever, that you can go watch pay-per-view because you don't want to pay $115 to watch an overhyped, boxing match, but go see the pay-per-view. And I don't know, it would be, they would have to do a non-lethal version. I think, I don't think our society is so far gone that, we would allow actual, live deaths on the air.
Well, no, not on the air, but on cable.
Right.
Definitely not over the air, but certainly a cable pay-per-view sort of thing. Not only would I think that would be legal, but I think people would pay for that. I really do.
I don't think society would stand for it. Maybe next year, but I think there's still enough morality left that they would say, we can't have that.
But if these were all convicted death row criminals anyway, they were all destined to die, right, but you gave them the opportunity to escape. I don't know. I'm thinking that society may be more ready for this than you're giving them credit for.
It just screams decline and fall of the Roman Empire.
Indeed.
I can't argue with that. I don't know. I mean, wouldn't that be an interesting, like, social, like a sociology thesis paper or something? Is society ready for Running Man? And, argue for it and against it. Dude, I mean, because they're gonna die. anyway, and this, so in one hand, you're giving them a chance of freedom. So, okay, that's something they would compete. But on the other hand, what does the proceeds from the proceeds from the pay-per-view go to the victims fund?
There you go. See,
like
that makes it palatable.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, God. I need to go shower now. This is kind of bad.
Yes, we did go there.
What do you think, audience? Is society ready for Running Man? Email GeekRant at elementop.com and give us your thoughts on this.
I mean, we're half a step away from Death Race 2000. I mean, anytime there's a high-speed police chase, let's be honest, people turn on to watch somebody die.
Oh,
yeah.
I'm addicted to Live PD. I got to admit. Have you guys watched that thing?
No, never heard of it.
Oh, yeah. Don't start. You can't turn it off. It's like every Friday and Saturday night. It's a 2-hour or 3-hour long episode of Cops that runs live, like with about 6 or 7 different precincts in the US. And, they just go from different scenes of cops pulling over people. And it's pretty hardcore. I didn't realize it's like that out there on the streets on a regular basis.
Man, I don't know. Now I'm just, you paralyzed my mind, Mark. Doesn't take much, but now I'm caught. So
yeah, I come from good old fashioned East Texas white trash, and I often say that my family reunions are an episode of Cops waiting to happen. So that sort of TV just brings back too many memories for me. Maybe we should watch people kill snakes instead.
Yeah, I was sitting up here at the church Tuesday night, and I was leaving, and I walked out the door, and I happened to look, and like a foot from the door, there was a snake. And I'm not quite sure of the measurement. Some people said it was about 2 foot long. It might just been a little under 20 feet long. I couldn't tell, but I was like, I can't let it sit. And the weird thing is, it was just setting. It was just kind of coiled there, and it wasn't moving. It didn't react to me as I walked by. I was just like, okay, I'm going to kill the snake. And so I looked around, and I found this 1x6 that was about 4 feet long. And so I was like, okay, this is what I'm using. I get it and slam it down, and I missed the head the first time. That got its attention. It started writhing, and I just kept grinding that 1x6 into the concrete. And when the snake would kind of calm down, I would like pick up and move a little bit, and I finally hit the head, smashed the head, and then I couldn't figure out. I was like, okay, how am I going to get the snake on the end of this plank to carry it outside? I'm not touching the thing, because there's only 2 types of snakes, those that are dead and those that are pre-dead. Those are my 2 snake classifications. So I ended up using my mic stand to kind of get it on the end. I had my arms outstretched, and that, walking around, getting my isometrics in, because I'm not going to let it down to unlock the door. And I get it and throw it out on the concrete driveway. And then just to be sure, I run over it a few times in my car, back forward, slam on the brakes, and then I drive. And then I go home, and so yeah, so now I'm not the gooey kid. I'm Seth the Snake Killer. So.
I honestly, there's probably a larger section of the world that would be bothered by that story than of the convicted killers being killed in combat.
Probably,
yeah.
I mean. The sad part is you're right. So, your choices are watch a man kill a snake or watch convicted felons fight for the right to live. You have to outlaw one and glorify the other. I don't know which would win in this country. I mean, a lot of people hate snakes, so, and the sad part is a lot of the people who hate snakes are also the ones who love so you're going to be splitting the vote on there, because they're the same people who would love the convicted felons fighting for the right to life. So you're going to split the vote there, and then all the hippie freaks, they
don't want either of them to happen.
They hate people who hate animals, and so the snakes would probably win.
All right, so quick poll. I'm looking here at the box that my new phone came in, and I realize I have a problem with keeping boxes in case I want to return it. Quote, right. In case I want to return it. And I'm looking over here, and I see the box to the last phone that I bought 2 years ago sitting over there in the corner. What's the appropriate amount of time to keep a box in case you're going to return it? I tend to keep them forever.
Well, since you're not going to be using that phone anymore, now you discard that old box.
So I just always one box in storage.
Your current product that you might need to return, you need to have the box for it. You're not going to return that other box, the other phone anymore because you've moved on.
Yeah, but don't I need an on deck box just in case something doesn't work out?
No, because you save all the original boxes. So, unless you're planning for disaster recovery, water gets in the garage and ruins your box collection, then maybe you need to have a secondary box location, or, you can just buy a box from Amazon and have it.
I need to make redundant copies of my boxes. Of course,
I think 3D print them.
If you buy a box from Amazon, what does it come in? Something to think about.
It comes in product.
It comes wrapped in echoes.
Right.
All right, let's talk about something a little more serious. Heat reflective paint. If you live in the desert, that's kind of a thing.
I think it is. I don't know yet. I'm going to find out this week. My garage is a nightmare to work in when it's hot. You can't do anything in there, and I'm the sort of guy who likes to hang out in there and wreck my wife's car and blow up computers and stuff like that. Anyway, I'm out there in this sweltering heat, and I called my air conditioning guy, and I said, I got this air conditioner in the garage, but it's doing nothing. What's going on? He comes out, he brings out one of these FLIR heat sensitive cameras, tells me I've got no insulation in the walls or something. So I'm thinking, oh, well, okay, fine, I'll fix that. And then I was talking to him, and I said, I've got to paint the side of the house that the garage is in is a west-facing side, so it gets all the heat, after, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, the really bad heat. And I said, I'm wondering whether I should put awnings up or something just to keep the heat off this side of the house, and maybe that will do something. And he goes, well, I got this friend, and he's a painter, and he's been telling him about this concept of heat reflective paint. And I said, oh yeah, what is this, something Breaking Bad of paint or something? Anyway, it's some chemical thing. So it just so happens I had to paint that side of the house. So I go down to the paint store, the Sherman & Williams. You guys have Sherman & Williams out your way? Mm-hmm. You do? Okay. And I'm talking to the lady at the desk, and I said, listen, I heard about this thing, this heat reflective paint. And she goes, oh yeah, that's new. She says, we have to special order it, and it only comes in certain colors. Well, thankfully one of those colors was almost identical to what I needed, so it was fine. Anyway, it's called Loxon XP, and it's an IR reflective paint. So the deal is you paint something with it and no heat gets through. And I'm like, really? Come on, this is just a joke, right? I mean, this is some ridiculous thing. Apparently not. My AC guy tells me that his painting buddy got a piece of rebar and a blowtorch. And what he did was he painted the rebar with this paint, and then he put the blowtorch on it. And he said within 30 seconds of finishing with the blowtorch on the rebar, he could pick the thing up in his hand and hold it. And I'm like, are you serious? They've got paint that does that now? Yeah, apparently they do. So I've ordered, 5 gallons of this Loxon XP paint, and I'm going to put it up on the house this week, and I'll tell you if it works.
The other option would be to install a radiant barrier. You would have to take off the siding to really do that right, but you could just install a radiant barrier as well. Does the same thing. You could do both and maybe get an added benefit.
Yeah, would that work with stucco though?
I don't know, because typically radiant barriers are installed under a roof. So, but typically people don't live in the desert. So I don't know if you would be taking off the stucco and then putting the radiant barrier down and then putting the stucco back up.
Way more expensive than just painting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this paint, I can't say it's the cheapest thing in the world. It's like, I think it was about $350 for 5 gallons. So it's not cheap.
Just a quick Google search for heat reflective paint shows that there are several versions from Rust-Oleum. Yours is from Sherwin-Williams. The Loxon is from Rust-Oleum. There's a brand called Cool Coat with a K. But they all run about that price, about $60 a gallon.
Okay. Does it? I mean, I don't know. You're looking at Google there. Do people give it positive reviews, or have I gone and done a stupid thing again?
To be honest, everything I can see is marketing material. So, take that to mean whatever it means.
Well, it just means.
Well, I'll report in. I'll tell you what happens.
And you can also do the green thing of getting some drought-resistant shrubbery if you can find a shrubber who comes around in wagons. And then you could move your gray water to water them. So if you want to go off the grid and stick it to the man, you could maybe do it that way as well.
I would love to go off the grid. I would love it. I don't know about you guys, but I got my power bill this month, and we've gone and changed all the windows out in the house to put that low E stuff in to stop all the heat from getting in. Because obviously out here you got to do that. And my power bill, I'm proud to say, shows a 20% decline in power usage as a result of energy efficient, hacking of the house.
Right.
Which is really cool, right? The power company put my bill up $50 a month, even though I dropped my usage 20%.
That sounds about right, because they project and they pay bonuses based on their expected revenue. So you have gone and cut their revenue. So now you've saved electricity. So they've increased the generation cost and the transmission costs. It's just like I called and threatened to quit my satellite company, and they removed a fee. And then 2 months after they removed the fee, they upped my rate. So then I ended up costing more once I had the fee removed. So, if the paint works good on the garage, then you can paint the rest of the house with it maybe, and they can invent some new fee for you.
They will. And, I heard some guy a friend of mine who lives in Florida was telling me that apparently in certain regions in Florida, if you go off the grid, that is, you disconnect your house from the power company because you want to put solar on, you want to be 100% energy efficient, apparently you can lose your house. This is did you hear about some sort of rule? What is that all about?
Yeah, it's if you don't have, and it's one of these local things, I think, but if you don't have either electricity or water to your property, your house is not suitable for human habitation. And it's it's not, like I say, I don't know if it's a local ordinance or a state thing, but that happens. And it's kind of the same thing if people use their gray water to water plants and stuff, and then they get fined for keeping that water, quote unquote, out of the system, even though it's still in the system, just not the system they have control over. So that's power. It's government run amok.
Sure is.
Our representatives at work.
Yeah. Anyway, I just wanted to bring up this whole thing about the heat reflective paint, that it's an attempt to try to climate control in harsh, hot regions. And if it works, that'd be great. But I guess my power bill will be going up anyway.
I would be interested.
Go ahead.
I'm just curious to see stucco is about as good insulation as you can get. I'm curious to see how much paint can add to stone. You essentially have a ceramic barrier, if it's true stucco, if it's not the plastic stucco, between you and the sun. I'm amazed. That's the reason you use stucco, is because it's great insulating value. I would be interested to see if paint would have any effect on that at all.
Yeah. Well, me too. I'll film at 11.
And who knows, if this actually reduces your electricity usage even more, it might get it down to such a level that having, putting solar on your house, you then make enough electricity to where it could sustain it. Because, if that's where most of your electricity is going, is to keep your house livable, and all of a sudden you don't have to use as much, then maybe solar becomes an option for going off grid all the way.
Yeah. Yeah, if the county doesn't come in and throw me in jail for disconnecting myself off the power grid.
Right.
They don't throw you in jail. They just take your house from you. It's
Oh,
different.
there's that. Yeah.
You're still free. You're just homeless. All right, let's move on to a little bit of listener email in our mini rats segment. And I put this one first because it's somebody who agrees with me, and that's so rare on this show. Greg says, I couldn't agree more when you say, quote, our global mindset of buy and dispose can't continue. And he says, planned obsolescence has always been a hot button topic for me. Some people argue that I should replace my 20-year-old car with an electric vehicle, but as long as the maintenance costs are reasonable, I'm going to keep driving it, assuming they won't jack up the insurance rates for non-autonomous vehicles. We still use incandescent light bulbs in many of our rooms. I'm not about to take a perfectly functional 25-cent light bulb and throw it into the landfill just to replace it with a $3 bulb for a 100-watt equivalent. Well, you don't have to do that, but when it burns out, then you put the LED in. That's the way I do it. I have, for the last few years, I actually probably 10 years ago, I started with compact fluorescents, but now LEDs are prettier. They don't have that goofy corkscrew design. So anytime a bulb goes out, I just replace it with an LED. And they're not $3 anymore. They're $1.50 to $2. You can buy them on Amazon in bulk for $1 a bulb.
He says the 100-watt equivalent, and those
That's what I buy.
are a little more expensive.
I buy 75 watts and 100 watts. That's what I keep on hand, because what you're looking at me right now is 400 watts equivalent bulb. I've got 400 watt equivalent bulbs because I like the daylight, the 55K. I want white light. I don't want soft light. I don't want cool light. I want white. I want the brightest and most sun-like light you can get. So yeah, I buy them on Amazon for a 6-pack for like $12 usually. So $2 a bulb. And I figure that's the last time I'll ever replace them. I just recently replaced the bulb in my daughter's room. This bulb won't be replaced again by her. By the time that bulb needs to be replaced, it'll be, somebody else's house, most likely.
Greg illustrates a very interesting point here because he actually makes two different statements in this one email. One is about the philosophy of the global mindset of buy and dispose, as he states, but then he uses economics as a methodology of either supporting or refuting it. But I don't think it's an economic statement. I think what he's saying is, I don't like waste, and I can't agree more with that. I think that's fantastic. But then sometimes waste doesn't necessarily mean fiscal value. Like his point about getting rid of the incandescent light bulb to not replace with a LED light bulb is a statement about waste. It's not a statement about money. The incandescent light bulb is so energy inefficient that it's costing him way too much money to have that light bulb burning away every day.
Well, not only that, but there's also a waste issue because, like I said, you get 15,000 hours out of an LED, or about 1,000 hours, if you're lucky, out of an incandescent. So it's both a waste and an economic issue.
Right. But it's interesting, though, isn't it? Because if you could say, I don't want to waste what I've already got, it means that you're saying, I don't mind paying a premium for having not the latest stuff. So there's an issue here about technological evolution, and there's an issue here about waste. And I think there's arguments to be said on both counts, right? Like, would I drive around in a 20-year-old car that was fuel inefficient, had lost X% of its compression in the drivetrain, so I'm not getting performance out of it. It squeaks. It makes way too much exhaust. It's a pain to insure. I've got to jump it through emissions testing more times than I care to worry about. It doesn't have ODB2, so it's a pain to get that done. Blah blah blah. I could go on and on about this thing, but people have an emotional attachment to their car, so they keep it probably because it's their car from 20 years ago. Versus I could buy a Tesla Model 3 and be done with all of this and never have to worry about it. And Mark, your point is well taken too. If you buy a battery-based car, there's less moving parts that require maintenance, and I would dare say that the car will last you 10 to 15 years quite happily because it doesn't have as many moving parts that are going to break.
Right, but then you have the increased electricity costs at your house. And if you're not somebody if you drive 10 or 12,000 miles a year, then how long is it going to take you for the cost per mile, whether that is electricity or fuel, and because you're going to have maintenance either way. I understand the electrical maintenance is less, but whenever you do have to go in for maintenance, it's more expensive because there's less of them around, and so it's more specialized. So how many miles do you have to drive for the savings of the electricity rate to overcome the price you pay on a car? If you're somebody, and if that cost savings is 1 year, well, then, get your car today and buy something new. But if the cost savings is 17 years, well, the electric car is probably going to wear out in 17 years. And at that point, you're, because at some point your 20-year-old car is going to wear out anyway, or the maintenance will become prohibitively expensive. And, at the end of your maintenance cycle, you buy a new one and then you go for more energy efficient. So it's a question of, do you want to pay up front and generate incremental savings, or do you want to pay a little bit more over time? So, it's a hard thing, and there are no 100% right answers on that because, everybody's driving style is different.
What I think is interesting here is this whole discussion has taken a very different turn. He quoted me when he said global mindset of buy and dispose. And I was talking about the buy something cheap, use it up, throw it away, buy something else cheap, versus buy something quality, keep it forever. In the case of cars that we've swerved into here, it's completely the other way around. The cheap car will outlast the expensive electric. The cheap gas will outlast the expensive electric. That's just the way the physics is right now. It's just the way it works. Those batteries last... Well, we don't really know. We haven't had electric cars on the road for 10 years. We don't really know, but we estimate battery life to be 5 to 7 years. And then at that point, it's so cost prohibitive to replace the batteries, you might as well buy a new car. Whereas you buy even the cheapest internal combustion gas car, you can expect 15 to 20. 20 is getting to end of life, but 30 and 40 are not unheard of. I mean, there are 80-year-old cars still running as well as they did when they were 80 years old. Now, it took some skilled engineering and mechanics and maintenance work to get them there, but they do still exist. I don't think that the current model of electric cars can be made to last 80 years. So it's an interesting thing there. You got to consider the overall life of the thing if you're going to look at an economic value. But if you look at it as a what best suits me, for the next X years, then those things, sometimes you, like Miles, you said, you're paying a premium for, your preference. And I think that's okay. I think where we get into the thing is we discount the value of preference, or we try to put my preference on you. And so the Honda Prius guys, they prefer different things than I do. I want space. I want a lot of steel protecting me in the event of an accident. Those are things that are important to me. I'm a big guy. I need a big car. I don't need hundreds of horsepower. I don't need 0 to 60. I think that's the most ridiculous statistic ever. 60 to 120, that's a more valuable statistic because that's what you actually need when jumping on the interstate or passing somebody. Nobody ever talks about that, though. But my preferences mean that there is just not an electric vehicle or a hybrid vehicle that works for me at all. And so I pay in different ways. I pay in fuel. I pay in at some point I expect to be paying tax penalties for driving a big gas guzzling car. That I don't think that's more than 5 years away. I will be penalized for driving the car I like. That was a long soliloquy there. I'm sure you're thinking of which part of that you're going to respond to.
The thing is, you also have the political ramifications of your choice. Like what happens when we get the next hippie green president in there who wants to up the ethanol content of gasoline from 10 to 15% so they can screw the American consumer more. Then you have increased wear and tear on engines because of the hotter temperatures and the cheap material they use to build the engines. Then all of a sudden, your gasoline engines aren't going to last as long, or you're going to have to then buy these chemicals to make your gas twice as expensive so it doesn't destroy your car. And then all of a sudden, those electric cars look real good unless you live in the country and, you use up your battery charge to get halfway to the city you're going to. So, there's a lot of factors that are going in. And one of the things people never take into consideration are the factors that are outside your control. People tend to assume the factors as they are today are going to stay as they are. And that is rarely the case.
Yeah, I think there's also that risk of early adoption being on the bleeding edge rather than the leading edge with this. You brought up the point, Mark, about we don't know how long these batteries are really going to last, and when they need to be replaced, we don't know what they're going to be replaced with, whether or not the next generation of power technology is going to be cheaper or it's going to be different, or what it's going to be. Cars are a collectible too. I mean, maybe that first generation car is something people want to keep. I don't know. Maybe a Tesla Model S is going to be something that, 50 years from now will be like having a 60s Mustang or something like that. I don't know.
But, the Model Ts and Model As are still on the roads. Not many of them, but they're still out there. I just don't think we're going to see a Tesla Model S in the year 2050.
I don't know. You'll be able to print a battery that will charge that.
Interesting.
Buy your 3D printer and buy the special electricity conductive gunk to go with it, and then you can print yourself out a battery that will work with your Model S. Some do-it-yourselfer enthusiast probably already has the plans available and is just waiting for technology to catch up.
I predicted years ago, like 2004, 2005, that in the distant future, our homes would be plumbed with water, natural gas, electricity, and 3D printing chemicals. And it would be a service that you pay just like your water. There's a meter that meters how much of each chemical you use, and you get a bill each month. And so you just have, instead of a microwave, you have the replicator in your kitchen, and you print up the dishes that you're going to eat on tonight. And then you have this bay of solvent that is also metered, and you throw it into the solvent. It dissolves and goes down the drain out to the reclamation tank where they extract the materials back. And the same we do with water. When you flush your sewage, they reclaim that. I think in the distant future, that's what 3D printing is going to look like. It'll just be built into our homes, plumbed in, a service that we pay for, and there'll be a delivery and a disposal all built right in.
Wow. That's interesting.
Yeah. Interesting and believable, but I mean, that's an awful lot of that compound to be in the pipes. So I could see more it's a vat and there are tanker trucks that drive around filling them up. So, you place your order for 100 gallons of gunk to get delivered.
Well, you live on a propane tank system, so that's a model that you're familiar with. So,
right.
Yeah. Interesting. But I think the important thing in all this discussion is that Greg agrees with me. So having recapped that, let's move on to what Nathan has to say about his beloved friend Boris, his version of the Boris box. It says, "Hey guys, hoping you can weigh in on what I can do now that my first Boris box is dead or dying. I built it using a Pentium D Dell Optiplex and a pair of gigabit NICs and OpenSense. After a year and a half of flawless service, it's neither fully dead nor is it working. The temp replacement is, shudder, a $30 Netgear." Then he goes into what's wrong with it. I won't go into that right now. But then he has a question. Is it worth my trying to fix the Boris box? If not, is it worth it trying to find a pro-grade router that measured up? No throughput bottleneck, black holing, IPS, failed to ban, and squid. So it needs usage or storage. So it needs storage or USB. Or is Boris just teasing me and it's time to give up and rebuild him from scratch? Sorry to spew like this, but the frustration is real. Meanwhile, keep on keeping on. You guys are a major part of my past and current tech education. So I sent him an email with my, quick diagnosis of what I think the issue might be. But to address his issue, is it time to repair or rebuild? In my case, the Boris box my initial one was an old laptop that used a PCMCIA card. You got the young whippersnappers among us don't even know what those are. Big cards that slide into a big slot. And finding the network card when it died, as they do, they have a temporary lifespan, proved to be not only difficult but expensive. I ended up paying about $50 for just that network card. I did it because I'm stupid, and I had an emotional attachment to Boris. But I would say hardware that old, a Pentium D, that's old. I wouldn't invest any significant money in that. But what I would do is go to your local pawn shop and buy whatever's on their shelf for $100 and go again, because you're not going to be able to get any new replacement out of the box that's going to give you what you want for less than about $100. So that would be my advice. Just go to a pawn shop and buy a machine that somebody else discarded, just like probably this Pentium D was, that somebody discarded, and start over again. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, judging from his email, you're going to want to either fix or build a new one. And just a simple troubleshooting step, I don't know if you've tried it or not, would be to swap out the direction of the NICs and see if maybe it is your outgoing NIC that is bad.
It's fine.
And
it's
if
the same
that's
thing
the
I said
case,
to it.
then you know that, hey, it is that NIC and you can replace it, and also you probably have a hard drive laying around. Test the hard drive, see if it's bad. A funky hard drive can do weird things with the operating system, making the device not work right.
Well, this is kind of a flow over from the previous email a little bit. I've built, my God, dozens of firewalls and routers and IDS systems and all of that. And what I found of late, we have a number of remote buildings that have CCTV camera installations, and they all have independent incoming public internet services, cable into them. And I have to be able to control the data feed to a level that the normal routers, the cable providers give you won't do. So originally I was doing a similar thing. I'd buy an old PC and I'd stick a hard drive in there, as a little bit of RAM and a couple of NICs, and put on, I don't know, IPCOP or something like that, and be good to go. And that's fine, except that I started realizing that some of these locations are very hot, or they're in outside, or it needs sort of industrial level hardware. And over the course of trying a number of different alternatives, I stumbled upon a box on Amazon that was a small, I guess the size of an Intel NUC, those little mini micro PC things.
The Edge Router X?
Yeah, it might have been. These are from China. I know that. They've got 4 gigabit NICs on the back, a couple of USBs all through them, maybe a VGA port. You put laptop RAM in the thing, maybe an M2 SSD, and basically for a total cost of maybe $150 out the door, you've got yourself an industrial heat-resistant firewall that is super fast. They were based on an Intel chipset, but not old. There'd be maybe a Core i3 or something equivalent to that. And for about $150 out the door, I've got a 4-port NIC dedicated pfSense router with all of the trimmings and all of the control that you need. And it's in a little box. It doesn't take much in the way of power. It runs on a little 5-volt, power transformer. And the most important thing for me was speed. The one thing we often forget is that as we pump more data through bandwidth, particularly video, you're watching a lot of YouTube videos, or you're doing a lot of Netflix streaming or something like that, you are taxing that router. And that router used to be any old box would do. Well, not when you're starting to pump 3 terabytes of data through it a month. you probably want to have a little bit more speed. If you're doing video games and you're worried about latency and those sort of things factor into it, again, having a decent router isn't such a bad idea. And even these $30 Netgear jobs or the D-Links or whatever, they're not really going to cut it either. I'm a big believer in build your own and understand it, because it's good for security, it's good for fine tuning, but more importantly, you can absolutely get the hardware the way you want based on what you need for network connections for today's application rather than applications 5 years ago.
All right. I personally am no longer a believer in caching. I used to aggressively cache my data, but the web today is all encrypted traffic. Your video, your Netflix, your YouTube, all that stuff is coming encrypted, and caching just doesn't work anymore. So, Nathan, I'm sorry, Greg was the other one. You mentioned a need for storage. I'm not sure that you actually need that on the modern web. I think that caching is not really a valuable tool in the home network anymore.
Well, he might be talking in like for outgoing stuff. So the storage might not necessarily be for caching. He might have, for something other as simple as, a Pogo plug home solution kind of thing, where he's putting stuff on the box that he can get to, in like a DMZ type fashion, where he's not getting into his internal network.
He specifically listed Squid, which is a caching, probably for content management. I'm guessing using as a Squid proxy, or maybe something like Dan's Guardian. And those can be done on, like he said, USB or something like that. So the one that I mentioned, the Edge Router X, is a $49 box available from Amazon, elementop.com/Amazon. Edge Router, one word, X. It's a cheap 4-NIC router capable of VLANing and all kinds of cool stuff like that. It doesn't have any storage built in, but that, in the hands of somebody who knows what they're doing, is a really inexpensive, low-power option. It's from Ubiquiti, UBIQUITI, the Ubiquiti Edge Router X. And it comes with 256 megs of storage, which isn't a lot, but it's enough to run something like a Dan's Guardian, just caching small bits of data. So anyway, those are my...
Ubiquiti's a very good brand. We use their Edge routers in our data centers on their higher end kind of enterprise products, and they're very, very price competitive, and they run like tanks. They don't die. They're at least my experience has been nothing but good with Ubiquiti. Yeah,
and I'm looking at Amazon right now, $50 Prime, so you can have it in 2 days for $50. It's a DIY thing. You're going to need to know what you're doing. But it is a full-fledged Edge router designed to be an endpoint. So I think if I were going to buy something today, that's what I would buy. My home setup is I have a Buffalo router running DDWRT that I can control my security on, and I have that plugged into the Google Wi-Fi, and that is the best setup I've ever had for home use. Took care of all my bottlenecks, but you have to sort of let go and let Google. It totally takes over your network. The only endpoint I control is that Buffalo router at the edge. It completely controls all my network. And I had a hard time with that. At first I tried to take the wheel, and I got poor performance, and I was disappointed with it until I finally decided, well, let's just set this thing up, let it do what it does, and face it, it's smarter than I am, and my network has never been better. So that's where I am these days. I don't even run a Boris box anymore. I have sold out completely. I'm no longer the Tightwad Tech.
That's it. I'm out.
Well, Seth, it's been a good 5 years. It's been nice. And then lastly, Drew, I've had this one sitting in the mailbox for a while. He sounds off about our discussion we had about cops using Facebook as essentially their made a method of gathering data. He says, in regard to police using Facebook to ID people, my wife is a skip trace officer for a debt collection lawyer. While she has access to LexisNexis and several other proprietary tools, almost daily she comes home with tales of how Facebook is also a tool that she uses to find this person or that. While a growing percentage of users set up their privacy filters, a high percentage of their friends and family do not. All it takes is one insecure accountant to tag someone who she's looking for, and she has them. Joe Bob tagged Barry in a picture of him in a work t-shirt. Now she knows where Joe Bob works. Call the employer, verify employment, submit papers to courts, and garnish paycheck. So Facebook, all your base are belong to us.
It's scary, isn't it? But it doesn't surprise me, but it's scary that we live in a world where you can do that. I mean, we couldn't have done that 20 years ago. I mean, right. It would have been very hard. It would have been only the purview of those authorized to have access to that data. But today, anybody can do it. And she's obviously a professional in her, and, you know, regulated, I guess, in her area. But let's face it, everybody's got Facebook. So it would be the same thing that anybody else could do.
Yeah,
exactly.
We had a birthday party for my youngest. She turned 9 last week, but the party was this week. And I posted some pictures, and the standard Facebook settings are friends plus friends. Interestingly, it's very difficult to just do friends only. You can do specific people, but to do just friends, that first level, is very difficult. But Facebook intentionally makes that difficult to do. So I did friends plus friends. So my wife is obviously one of my friends, and all of her friends could see it. And her settings, when she shared it, was friends plus friends. And so I had people commenting on it that I didn't know. And I asked my wife, who is that? I'm not sure. And they're saying things like, what a cute little girl. And we trace it down, and it's, you know, it's a friend of a friend of a friend commenting on the pictures I posted of my 9-year-old. Now, I'm pretty guarded about what I put on Facebook, but it's that same sort of thing, right? If you think you're guarded, but your friends are not, and their friends are not, and their friends are not, it's very important that you be careful about what you share and how you share it.
Yeah, because you have your privacy set up good, and then your friend comments on it. Now, everybody who has access to their feed sees that unless you specifically block that person, they see, oh, wow, that is a cute pic. I'm going to jump in on that too. And, I've had running conversations in the comments on people I don't know because that, a person who is a mutual friend of ours posted something, and I said something snarky just because, I was being silly. And this other person who I didn't know said something snarky. Then I said something snarky back to them, and we started this conversation, and we didn't know each other. We had never met in real life, but we were talking on somebody else's post on Facebook. So yay, interconnectivity. So
yeah. It's scary though, because similar situation to that. I was on my tablet sitting watching TV, and I was just checking my email or something, and Google Maps have been constantly updating and adding all of these wonderful additive things. So, I've done a little bit of traveling this year. I took a lot of photos, and you put them on Google Photos to back them up or to share them with family or whatever. And the next thing you know, you're getting all these notifications and emails coming like, can Google use your photo to as a reference to this place you went to, or can you tell us, was it good, bad, or indifferent or whatever? So, like a review. So I've done that. I've added to it, thinking that I'm doing somebody else a favor. And 3 months later, I get this notification on Google who's telling me every trip I've ever made in my car for each day of the week, with a map showing everywhere I went and where I was and how long I was there, and a photo of where I stopped and where I got a cup of coffee and where I ended up getting gas, and then where, and I'm like, why did you put a freaking tracer on the back of my car and then just, let me just broadcast wherever I am, or, attach an ankle bracelet to me and act like I'm a felon. This is ridiculous, but this is default behavior now.
But they don't have to, because they convinced you to pick one up voluntarily and shove it in your pocket. So, and of course, we all know that that's private information, sensitive to you and Google only. And there's no account in the history of social media of any large company having data breaches that would cause that information to be able to get out in public. And, I mean, hey, I'm a fat middle-aged white guy. I don't care if people know what I do. But if I had an 18-year-old daughter who had a phone like this, and to know that somebody could get on there and see, because there's people, I mean, look, I'm not trying to say the sky is falling, but there's people who, if they can find that information out, are going to, just because there's people of that kind in society. And I have no ability to control or protect my family members if they pick up a universal tracking system and voluntarily opt in to every app that they put on their phone to share their complete location history. People, it's where they live, their friends' houses and all of this. And even if I never tag myself at my house, what happens if somebody comes over and checks in, because I had a Super Bowl party, checked in, it says Super Bowl party. Now my information is all over Facebook where I live. Yay, interconnectivity.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Miles.
No, I was going to say it's very, very difficult to opt out. That was one of the things I noticed about this mapping thing, was that I didn't even realize I opted in, to be honest. I had no idea that it was tracking my GPS location everywhere I went and then feeding it back to me like, haha, look what we found. I'm like, really?
If you turn on
Really,
Google now, if you turn on location sharing for Google now, that's exactly what it does. And again, we've had this discussion before. I am all about it. Google, take all my data as long as you give me something valuable in return, because it's public information. Where I live is a matter of public record. All you have to do is follow me to find that. It's effort, right? So the thing that you guys are scared about is that it's now effortless, and so that now evil people can both be evil and lazy. But honestly, there's no new information here. Anybody, not everybody, anybody could see where you go on a given day. They can go to the public street. They could go to Arizona. They could watch you. Miles, you own a company. You brand it on the show. You wear hats with your logo on it. It would not be hard to find one of your locations and sit and watch and look for you. You're broadcasting your face on this stream right now. I look for you. I follow you. I follow you home. I follow you to work. I follow you to the coffee shop. The only difference is that now I could be both lazy and a stalker.
It's empowering the bad, and it's kind of, I don't know. At some point, when are we not a number and we're a name? When are we losing our identity and just a piece of data on a computer? And it's just, the whole thing is just getting really sick. And I at some point I'm like, you know what? I'm ready to just go and live in an island somewhere. It just gets you after a while. I mean, I won't, but sheesh. I'm sure I'm not the only person to feel that way, though.
Yeah, and the thing that makes it hard is there's no way to enjoy the conveniences of modern society and maintain a level of protection or awareness, because I don't have control over that information. That information is taken, quote unquote, with my consent. Yeah, right. And then it is shared out to groups who then turn around and share it out to other groups. And, and then they tell two companies and they tell two companies. And the next thing you know, data couriers local in Uzbekistan knows that I go to Taco Bell 5 times a week, so it's just like, I want a little uncommon sense to be brought back into, the year 2017. If we can circle back around, put a pin in 2017 and circle back around to when the Running Man was made in the 80s, and just, there wasn't much left then, but at least there was still some uncommon sense, and pick some of that up and then come back and just say, here, you dropped this in the past, don't lose it again. And maybe we could be a little bit better. So.
Well, I mean, the difference here, the distinction that we're making is the difference between publicly available information and privately available information. Seth, when you made the joke that there's never been a data breach ever in the history, you're talking about the release of privately available information. Things like, your passwords, for example, things like your demographic data. And, it's unheard of for a software company to lose, say 3 billion users' data in a single hack. That's never happened.
Right. Yeah. And the thing about this is Yahoo kind of played it as good as they could play it, because back in a year ago, they said, hey, 500 million accounts got hacked 3 years earlier. And now it's, oh, by the way, it was every account that we had. And you say, oh, well, that's no problem. I just changed my password. Well, okay, you secured your account. But the thing is, they now know your mother's maiden name, your favorite dog, and your favorite high school teacher growing up, the same security questions you use for every other website. And they know your secondary email address. So, yay, you switched to Google and you forgot you had the Yahoo account. But now they know that, oh, I can go to this Google account and I can try these security questions and I can get in. But it's okay. We had you change your password. So, and again, we have no control. This is a case you could have done everything right, change your password, every 6 months or how often. The only thing you can do, and you can't go back in time and do it, is to make up random answers to security questions on websites. But then you have to keep that information somewhere. And if you keep it on another website, you're really not doing any good. So you have to get a safe at your house and hire an armed guard and keep that information in there. On Yahoo, I said my favorite dog was Old Yeller, and on Hotmail, I said it was, Shane. And then whenever I went to Google, I said it was Fluffy Lumpicus, and then you're not going to be able to remember that. Who cares how much memory is on your phone? Your brain only has so much information. And we've long since abandoned our brain as a storage thing. So, we haven't upgraded our capacity there. But yay, all of Yahoo's accounts were hacked 4 years ago, and they let it out in dribble and drabble. And now it's like everybody's so mad about Experian. How long has Yahoo been sitting on this and thinking, when can we let this out without any media backlash? Experian had a big hack, and that's, people's financial stuff. Let's go ahead and leak ours out now. Yahoo.
Yeah, so the killer quote here is from Amazon, from Yahoo. Based on an analysis of the information with the assistance of an outside forensic experts, Yahoo has determined that all accounts that existed at the time of the August 2013 theft were likely affected. That pretty well says it all right there. All of them. It's the same as the credit bureau. I've forgotten who we were talking. Experian. Saying something like 300 million users. Well, that's all of them, by the way. But in this case, it's 300 billion. 3 billion. There's only population of the entire globe is between 6 and 7 billion. So that's all adults and a lot of children on the planet. Essentially, of course, there are multiples. I have 2 or 3 Yahoos throughout the years because I forgot passwords or whatever. But yeah, they're all things now. And I just very recently was talking with somebody about hiring practices, and it was like, if I see a Yahoo account on a resume, I just throw that one in the bin. Because what does that say about that person if you're still using your Yahoo account, especially if you're applying for a tech job? Just say no. But yeah, 3 billion, all of them. So I was affected. Seth, I know you were affected. Miles, I'm guessing you had a Yahoo account in August of 2013?
I didn't.
No.
I had an account that was used for Yahoo groups, but it had nothing to do with me. It shared nothing in common with any of my regular security credentials. So I really was not affected by this. I'm one of those freaky tinfoil hat guys that runs his own mail server and runs his own data center stuff. So I'm able to have some level of control, albeit it's with all that power comes great responsibility. I've got to keep the damn thing up. But I've not outsourced any of the responsibility to things like email or file storage or anything like that to a third party. And that's probably just my natural non-trustiness of anything corporate.
I haven't used Yahoo Mail in this century. 97, 98, 99, I was using Yahoo Mail. But they do have a really excellent fantasy football program. And I've used that up until just the last couple of years. So I was definitely part of that hack. But yeah, all the data that it had, except for my name, was bogus. I used my real name for the fantasy football stuff, but that's it. So I'm not too worried about it. But at the same time, this was a thing that was quietly leaked out, and it's hard to even be mad at them because it's not a question of if, it's when. It doesn't matter how good your security is. You can't secure your people. And almost always these things get in through a person.
Right.
This is a golden age for criminals. I mean, it really is. Like, it used to be they had to go and put on stupid ski masks and go and rob a bank to get a bundle of money. Not now. They're sitting on their butts having with a pizza delivery, and they're just going nuts on the online, and they're making buku dollars, and they're doing nothing for it. And we sit back and go, wow, we've created this world of automation and everything's so simple, and we can sit on our butts and do nothing and talk to, our friend in Singapore or something from the other side of the planet. Yeah, so can the criminals.
So it's an equal opportunity situation.
It is. It's an equal opportunity. Yeah. Gosh, I don't know. It's sometimes there's just some days, man, you just want to say, I'm going to become Amish.
The technology makes lives easier for the good and the bad. The murderers are more efficient murderers because of modern technology. Thieves are more efficient thieves because of modern technology. This doesn't bother me. This is just the way things are.
Yeah. We've got to take control of this ourselves. This isn't also something we can expect our governments or our elected officials to do. Man, they don't even know how to turn on a computer, half of them. They've got no idea about technology. And then the ones that do come in with weird ideas that make no sense as well. So let's not let them take care of this, all right? We're going to have to do it ourselves.
And you don't want to teach them how to turn on a computer because then they'll think, oh, this is something we can tax people for. That's their first thought is how can we generate revenue for the government, so we can pad our pensions and not our pensions, our re-election campaigns. We all know that's what it is. Everything's on the up and up. There is no corruption or vice or grafting going on anywhere in the halls of any legislative body that meets anywhere in this country. I'm sorry to impugn the reputation from everyone from a lowly school board member all the way up to the mighty halls of Congress. I apologize and beg the internet's forgiveness.
So while we live in a world where criminals can do evil things from their mother's basements, we also live in a world where a hurricane destroyed island can get a return to the world of the connected by way of a hot air balloon. That's pretty cool.
Yes, we've talked previously on this show. I don't know how recently it's been about Google's Project Loon, to use balloons to, basically so you don't have to go all the way up to the stratosphere for the satellite, has, using balloons to deliver connectivity to parts of the world where, digging cable or setting up tower relays every few miles would be cost prohibitive. So the FCC has allowed Alphabet, Google's parent company, a temporary experimental license to operate from October. So this has already started through April of next year to use their Project Loon to enable LTE cell reception in like Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands from, when the hurricane came through and basically leveled the island. So this is, we talk about Google being evil, and part of the job of an evil company is to do good things to show the world that they're not evil And so here is Google doing something good for society. And, you know, and of course, I mean, they get the benefit of the good publicity and testing the real world scenario and all of that. But it is still kind of cool that we can, you know, put some balloons up over an island and get cell service back.
Yeah, it is. It is. A little bit of reality check. It doesn't help to have really good LTE reception where you've got no drinking water and no food. So,
but Google can't fix that. They're doing what they can do. They can't bring food. Yeah. They're a technology company. They can send money, and I'm sure they have because that makes them look good. But you know, don't downgrade the good thing that they're doing because they're not doing the good thing that you wish they were doing. There are people doing that. There are people delivering food. There are people delivering water. And in this interconnected world, you know, data is almost as important as food and water. Not quite, but it's really close.
Well, I know Elon Musk has seen this as another opportunity to go in there with his solar panels and his battery and save the day. I mean, he's getting a lot of press on that one as well. I just don't know how much of this is just political bantering and opportunistic exercises for these companies to make themselves look good, whereas still the people on the ground are suffering. And look, I mean, look, what is the solution to the people on the ground? We've got to send in either the military or something to be able to bring them what they need to be able to get through the day. But yes, as a second tier thing, I agree. Google's doing something helpful here. Musk is probably going to do something helpful as well. But I just don't want the spotlight to go to that when we're forgetting the original on the ground problems that are there.
Well, this illustrates the fact that Google is so big that they are essentially an NGO, a non-government entity now, and they are doing the work of other NGOs across the country, whether it be relief work or, you know, as one Washington Post author says, that they've become a national threat because they're too big. You know, Google is so big that you can't call it any one thing anymore.
Yeah, no, and you know, before we go to that story, I understand, but here's the deal. People on the ground have a way to communicate with the hub of resources. So, you know, you don't want them to spend all day driving out on an island, come back, give the report. And so that way the next day stuff can get organized to go out. They can go out and say, hey, we need an ambulance at grid plot so-and-so. Hey, you know, there's people here. Hey, you know, we need heavy machinery here to rescue people trapped in rubble. So this project is technology and research and altruism and all of this. This is an overlap. You know, you draw the Venn diagrams with all the circles and this hits the sweet spot of all of them. And so, you know, as I facetiously said, you know, it's allowing them to put a good face on their company. But, you know, if this is the only thing that were going on the island, I would have a problem with it. But this enables the aid that is already there to be disseminated faster, you know, and you don't have to spend so much time searching and reporting and waiting for people to come back. So, you know, I mean, yeah, Google's big enough now. I don't know. Do I want to bash Google or Apple more? I think I still want to bash Apple more, but you know, I got to hand it to Google for doing something good here. So.
It's a multi-headed beast, and you know, I got a little prickly there when Miles said that they're not doing the right thing. I get a little frustrated when people go out and do something good, and they're criticized for not doing the good thing that people would prefer that they do. You know, and restoring cell service to an island devastated by hurricanes is in no way a bad thing. You know, Seth, you cited some great examples there. Just basic emergency response services, or you know, disaster recovery coordination. All these things require communications. And in 2017, it probably goes food, water, shelter, bandwidth, and so they're meeting the bandwidth need. And so I don't want to dump on them. If they get some positive credit out of this, what's the harm in it? Even if the whole thing was entirely a PR stunt, so what? They're making lives better for people. What's the negative?
Well, I understand where you're coming from, and I don't want to come across like dumping on Google about doing what the best they can do given their resources. I'm not trying to do that, but I'm trying to keep it real, because if you've got no power, what's the point of trying to have great cell service if you can't charge your phone? I mean, there's a whole bunch of just basic sort of higher priority things that are not anything. Look, give Google a pass here. That's not Google's problem. You don't have power. It's not Google's problem. You don't have water or food, or that, there's lack of hospitalization or medicine. It's not. But what we have to, as a society, remember is that tech is a wonderful thing, but it ain't the basic law of survival. It can help, but it can't help you without food, water, and clothing, and shelter. And these are the things that I think need. I mean, look, Google has to do what Google can do. Google is great about doing what they're doing. All power to them. Let them do it. All right. I don't, like I said, I don't want to bash on Google about this. I'm probably more frustrated with government. I'm more frustrated with infrastructure investments, and I'm more frustrated with the lack of use of the military to go in there and to shore these things up, to allow Google to do the best thing possible and to have the greatest effect. So, yeah, all right. Google, I'm sorry. I shouldn't be dumping on you, but I am dumping on all that other stuff.
All right, so to pick up with the story that I tried to lead into earlier, there are people who are genuinely afraid of. We're picking on Google because the Washington Post picks on Google, but any significantly large organization is a threat to other large organizations, and throughout history, there has been the church and the government, the king and the church. Right, those are the big organizations. And they have been battling for millennia. The Pope versus the King is a long story. Governments, big entities, like to be in control. So, Miles, the U.S. military, you're talking about using the military for human relief, humanitarian efforts. Some would say that is the job of the military. Others would say it's not the job of the military. I'm not even going to have that discussion right now. But the point is, militaries belong to governments. There is no, you don't own a military, Miles. There are some organizations, however, that own enough mechanized equipment that they might as well be a military. And when organizations get that big, other organizations consider them a threat. And so this law professor at Fordham University says that Google has become a threat to modern society, that they're crushing open markets or dampening open markets, that their own market power has begun to corrupt them, and I think it's at least worth having these discussions. But let's not forget that Google is not a person. Google is a group of people, just as the U.S. government is not a person. The U.S. government is a group of people. And so it's essentially, this is the group of people you like versus the group of people you don't like. That's really what this all comes down to.
Right. And I can tell that the person who wrote this, and this article is referencing a Washington Post column. And I can tell the person who wrote the Washington Post column is someone from a liberal persuasion, because it's the government's responsibility to regulate and control Google and break it up because it's too big. Whereas it's not the individuals who use Google services blindly, and again, I'm not talking people like you, Mark, who you've made your Excel spreadsheet decision tree. Do I want to give up this brain function to Google? What are the pros and cons and all that? But versus people who say, I don't know, I just go to Google and type it in, and I use them for email, and then I get on the Facebook space, and that's how I know what other people are doing, because that's what everybody else is doing. Whereas they just blindly follow the masses, giving these corporations power. Because let's face it, if for the next week nobody used Facebook would change dramatically, because then companies would not be paying money to advertise on Facebook, and their advertisements, site traffic would go down and all of that, and Facebook wouldn't be a problem. people, I mean, we're not going to go back to Yahoo Mail, but you can go to Hotmail or whatever Microsoft is calling theirs this week, or any other. There's still got to be a few more mail servers around, or we can start our own regional ones. Your ISP usually gives you one, and quit using Google for search. Go to DuckDuckGo or maybe Yahoo search, and just don't use your real name, or Bing. You gotta admit, Los Links, those are some great commercials from Bing. They deserve an occasional search just for those commercials. And then all of a sudden Google loses their data and they become less large, and then the government didn't have to do anything. Informed people made the decision, I'm not going to do that because I think they're too big and I think they're a threat. One person does that, no big deal. A million people do that, then all of a sudden it's going to feel the pinch. So while, the company may or may not be too big, you have to be big enough to deliver services. And how big does that have to be? I don't know. But then, if Google wasn't big enough, they wouldn't be able to create a network for people's cell phones to work, and they can call out and say, yes, honey, I'm alive. I just, there's no harbors for the ships to get me out of here, and then so they can't do that if they don't have the millions and billions of dollars to pour into R&D. So is Google too large? I mean, I think so, but at the same time, Gmail has become my primary email address, and we're doing this show with Google Hangouts using Google Docs. So, we're part of the problem.
Miles, I know you have a comment.
Are they too big? Are we too weak that we refuse to try anything else? Maybe we've brought our own problem upon ourselves and we're expecting our government to bail us out and making our own bad mistakes. I'm not a fan of that.
Well, let me pause you there. Anytime you're expecting anybody to bail you out, whether it's government or Google or anybody else in between, or the church or the Pope, if you expect some other entity higher than yourself to bail you out, that's a problem. And we have created a society of people who 100% of the time expect some larger entity to bail themselves out. And what's true of government, and what's true of the church, and what's true of Google is that none of their resources are their own. All of their money, all of their power is yours. And when we start realizing that, suddenly there's not so much to be afraid of.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. I think the only thing that I'm kind of annoyed at Google about, there's a lot of things I like about Google. The only thing I'm annoyed at Google about is that a lot of the people 10 years ago, maybe even as much as 15 years ago, who were real up-and-comers in terms of areas of research, areas of maybe evangelism in certain technologies, like open source technologies. People like Ray Kurzweil, as a researcher, those sort of people, they all got swept up and employed by Google. And then you start wondering whether or not they have the right to wax philosophically without worrying about their paycheck. And that's kind of scary, because these are people that I really respected their work from before. And now it's kind of all become Google's work. And I don't really know who's behind what anymore, and how much of it is being influenced by their own security requirements, or by what Google wants you to hear. So it is a bit scary. On the other hand, they made the choice to become Google employees. Money, they sold, I don't want to use the word sold out. Well, I guess they did, didn't they? I mean, they basically said, we out there used to be these great, evangelists of certain technologies or civil rights or whatever, but we needed to pay the mortgage, so we took a job with Google, and now we're just going to quieten down a bit.
But see, they wouldn't say they sold out. They would say they cashed in.
Oh, yeah, I guess.
Well, there's the old joke among liberal arts majors that, the only thing you're equipped to do with a philosophy degree is think deep thoughts about being unemployed. The fact is, people got to eat, and money's got to come from somewhere. And while certainly Ray Kurzweil didn't need any more money, he already had plenty of money. I got to think that he didn't join Google for the money. He joined it because he saw an opportunity to advance his goals, whatever those might be. In his case, it's to live long enough to become a machine. So, everybody makes a choice, to sort of digress a little bit. I don't believe in things like, for example, the National Endowment for the Arts. If you can't sell art, your art has no value. I'm sorry, that's just the truth. If your art had value, you wouldn't be a starving artist. Starving artists, by definition, are poor artists. You're making something that the world doesn't see, or doesn't need, or doesn't want. And maybe when you're dead, your art will have value, but currently it doesn't. So go do something else.
Come on, Mark. Transition over to pay for what you like. You've set it up perfect. Come on. I was waiting. Gotta go. The problem isn't that they're not any good. The problem is we have a society that expects the data I give you for allowing, for using my aggregated stuff. And when I search for things should enable me to get that without paying them any money. I want it for free, dadgummit, so I can use my money to stand in lines and buy mediocre coffee from Starbucks, just to get meta on the whole show here.
I hadn't even thought about that, Seth, but that is an excellent lead in to the concept of, you get what you pay for. You either pay for it with your money, or you pay for it with your attention, or you pay for it with your data, or you pay for it with your privacy, or you pay for it with your freedom in the long run.
Or you define what your needs are based on a single organization telling you what your needs are and controlling the conversation.
Oh, you mean like Apple?
Well, possibly Apple, possibly Facebook, possibly Google, telling you that this is what you want and therefore you come to us to get it. That's scary. If the the conversation that we're having in regards to Google and Google-like activities and so on now is fine. But meanwhile, SpaceX are out there trying to get to Mars right now, and Google's not. So thank God that they are, right? Like, thank God somebody is doing something different and Google isn't controlling the entire conversation. That's where the danger is. We need lots and lots and lots of other little Googles around the place that can come up with different points of reference so that not one is controlling the thought of the masses.
Go ahead, Mark.
I just want to, do you really think Google or Facebook or any organization like that has the ability to control thought? I mean, you're a little more Machiavellian than I am.
Well, I'm thinking herd-like. I'm thinking that if everybody diverts their search to Google, and rather than their brains turning on and thinking adequately about something, that they go to Google for their search, they go to YouTube to watch their media, and it's what Google is recommending to them that is adjunct to what they watched before, but with a slight twist the way they want them to go. It's very, very easy for Google to control the psychological desires of anybody who's watching their stuff. Very easy. And whether they do or they don't, the possibility is there when it's all in one organization's wheelhouse.
And Mark, I got to turn this around on you. How can you look at society today and think that companies don't control thought? People don't think. I mean, just we wouldn't be in the state we were in if people would put down their phones for a day and ponder how we got here. But that's not going to happen because we need to go to our echo chambers so they can tell us what we have to be outraged at today, so we can all be mad at Experian for giving up the data, and we can let Yahoo off the hook because they gave up the data years ago. We're past that now. I mean, how can you think that people aren't their thought isn't being controlled, but it's being shaped and directed?
Okay, I'll give you influenced. But not controlled. But again, what entity that has had the ability to influence thought in the history of man has chosen not to do it?
Yeah, nobody, because
right.
that's what you pay for.
Yeah.
I mean, it was the church, it was the state, it was the Madison Avenue. Their entire goal. Those of you who don't live in the U.S., Madison Avenue is shorthand for advertising in the U.S. Their entire goal is to influence you into certain behaviors. But then again, isn't that exactly what taxes are for? To tax the things we don't want you to do, and give you rebates for the things we do want you to do. I mean, humanity is about trying to influence others. I do it every day with my children. I influence them. I brainwash my children. It's called parenting. So, to single out a single entity and say that this one is more evil than that for doing what all humans have done since the dawn of man, I think is a little specious.
How dare you say this is my fault? I need the government to fix it.
The fact is, you use the word, Miles, humans are a herd animal. And they will follow anything that looks like leadership. It doesn't have to be real leadership. It just has to look like leadership.
There you go, quoting from American President again.
I was actually just quoting from my own high school experience. The jerk jock got the chicks because his behavior looked like leadership. It wasn't, but it looked like it. And if people don't know the difference, they follow it. So you're either, to quote, I think it was Patton, lead, follow, or get out of the way. You're one of those three people in every situation. You're a leader, you're a follower, or you're a bystander. And you're probably all three of them at different points in your life. So when somebody steps out to be a leader, the easiest thing to be is a commentator. You sit back and you don't have to have a good idea. You just have to find faults with the other ideas. And so we have a world of commentators, three of them right here, who've spent the last hour and 40 minutes commentating. So we're every bit as much as a part of the problem as anyone else. But it gets a little frustrating to me when suddenly some entity that gets big enough is suddenly they're the bad guy just because they have succeeded in doing what you really wish you could do.
Yeah, because I would do it better.
It's like, we vilify the rich all while trying to gain wealth.
I think I'm going to make it so next week is every day is opposite day. I don't like this herd thing. I'm going to try and do exactly the opposite of everything else in the world. See how that goes.
Many, many years ago, I had a conversation with a young girl who was wearing the classic goth early 90s style skulls and black spiked hair and mascara over one eye and that kind of thing. And I asked her, why do you dress like that? And her reason was because I want to be different. Really? Okay. Tell me about where you got your jewelry. Oh, well, it was at this cool little boutique down in Deep Ellum, which is a trendy place down in Dallas, where they sell this sort of stuff. Okay, so you are so different that a person makes his living selling that stuff to different people. How different are you? When everything you've bought is mass-produced in China and sold to you by a person who makes his living off of, quote, different people. Nobody is different, and the more you set out to be different, the more you just blend in with the different herd.
That's well said.
Yeah, people, they don't want choice, Mark. They want the illusion of choice. And anybody who has seen The Matrix and I think that was brought out one of the fan film sequels that were made, we don't really want choice. We just want the illusion of choice. So if it doesn't matter how many other people are doing it, just as long as nobody around me is doing it, I can claim the originality of being different just because I chose to rip off a different set of ideas than you chose to rip off when you followed the masses.
Right. In a recent conversation, somebody asked the group that I was in, are you a leader or are you a follower? Recognizing that at some point, all of us are, some of the things. And my response was, I'm either a leader or I'm antisocial. It all depends on whether or not people choose to follow me. Because I go do my own thing, and you either follow me or you don't. And honestly, most of the time, I don't care. So no, I'm not a follower. I'm an antisocial guy striking off into the wilderness, and probably will be reported found dead on the mountaintop. But at least I will have done it my way, to quote the famous song lyrics. Anyway, so that's why I have a podcast, so I can rake in millions and millions of dollars by espousing the beliefs that other people already hold. No, wait, that's Limbaugh. He did that. I failed.
The only thing that separates me from Rush Limbaugh is time and talent. So
That's right.
Other than that, I mean, where he's I guess he's an elderly white man now, and I'm a middle-aged fat white man. So, we're very similar like that.
Just one good break and a lot of talent. That's all you need.
That's it.
All right. Have we beaten this horse? Is it ready for the glue factory?
I think it is.
Okay. So I haven't looked at it. Seth, what do you got to end the show for me?
Okay. So if you've ever, if you woke up and the burning question in your mind is today Christmas? Go to this website. Is it Christmas?
Check this
Is
out.
it Christmas.com? It will tell you.
Oh, that's good.
So,
oh man, you can't spoil
sometimes you
this
wanna
for
know.
people. They've got to go to isitchristmas.com.
That's just go there and find out. You're like, you wake up. Is it Christmas yet? If Will Ferrell yelling Santa is the best thing in your life, then this needs to be the first place you go. Access this on the website, isitchristmas.com. You don't even need the www dot anymore. And just, when you get here, hit, your little internet icon and then go to your bookmarks or leave it as another tab, and you will know if today is Christmas. Because the world needs to know.
Spoiler alert, today is not Christmas.
But, it depends on what day you're listening to this. Today might be Christmas. You need to go to this website to verify. Well, otherwise, you really can't know for sure.
There's only one authoritative source, and that is isitchristmas.com.
That's right.
All right, so now this is the part of the show where I ask you to tell me what you think. You have heard well over an hour of what I think. Tell me what you think. Go to elementop.com, click the Contact Us button at the top of the page, answer the world's hardest CAPTCHA, fill out the form, and that will send an email that gets priority in my inbox. Or you can send an email to geekrant@elementop.com and let us know what you think. Or you can dial 559-I-AM-OPI and leave a voicemail on our Google Voice line because, yeah, it's Google. Yeah, Google Docs, Google Gmail, Google Hangouts, and Google Voice. So let us know what you think. Sound off. I have been told by experts in the field that a good way to foster audience engagement is to give them assignments, to have a call for action. And apparently I'm doing it wrong because at the end of every show, I have a call for action. Tell me what you think. Either you don't think anything or I'm doing a bad job of a call for action. Which is it? Only you know. So, having said all of that, Seth, what happened this week in history?
All right, Mark. So this week in history, on October the 7th, 1954, the first transistor calculator was created. IBM researchers modified an existing Model 604 vacuum tube calculator to use transistors. Now, while this experiment didn't shrink the desk-sized machine nor make it any faster, it did use only 5% of the power of the vacuum tube-based design. So this encouraged further experimentation by IBM, which introduced the first commercial transistor calculator 4 years later, the Model 608. And that all happened this week in history, Mark. And now, back to you.
Stuff was big, and now it's small.
Yeah, that must have been heavy. You wouldn't want to carry that around in your pocket, huh?
Yeah.
Well, it was a desk size thing. So, don't think like a desktop computer, think a desk. So that was, you would need like a dolly, and a flatbed to haul this around. And apparently a lot of power to use it because vacuum tubes suck the juice. So
people always, or not always, but often like to talk about how the robots are going to take our jobs. The word calculator was first applied to humans. There was a calculator pool. There was a group of people, often women, who worked in large number crunching industries, NASA being a good example of them, IBM being another. And their job was to do long division and complex equations with their slide rules. And they were calculators. And you would come up with your equation. And you being the executive type person or the engineer type person, your time was too valuable to be spent in working the math. You would hand that down to a group of people that did the math. They were the calculators. And then they would send the results back to you. And then you would take those results and plug it into the next thing that you needed to do. So the very first job, or among the first jobs to be lost, were the calculators.
No, you forgot. You dictated this to your secretary.
Good point.
Who typed it out and put it in an inner office form that then went down to the sub-basement mailroom trolls, who then sorted it whenever they're like, "Dadgummit, I'm on my coffee break." And they would sort it and then route it back up the building to the calculator pool, where the low totem pole, because they don't get secretaries, they just get the junior calculator to go open it and look at it and probably do it. And then one of them checks the work, where it then goes back in the inner office memo down to the troll to reroute up to your secretary, who then makes sure you see this. So no, Mark, this did not kill one job. You killed entire sections of corporate America with this.
Anyway, you know how they have like dead languages out there, like, they discover some country or tribe or something from a million years ago or whatever had a particular language, but no one can work out what it was. Right. I wonder if in 1,000 years they're going to look back at shorthand and think that was a dead language. Do you remember shorthand?
Yeah.
And then it was replaced by something called SuperWrite, which was a blend between shorthand and cursive English. And it was something that it took skill to write it, but if you could read regular English, you could dictate, you could make out SuperWrite.
And then that was replaced by LeetSpeak.
Yeah, go ahead.
I said, and that was replaced by LeetSpeak. Are you okay? Ruach.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I interrupted. You know that because
the business teacher at Edgewood High School was an extremely attractive teacher. I had a crush on her, so I took every business class I could take, including typing. So
nice. Well, I think this was a well-rounded show. Everything from the world powers are out to get you and put your tinfoil hat on to Seth thought I had a cute business teacher. So yeah, I think we covered everything we could on this show.
Don't forget snake killers versus killers.
You were both talking. I didn't understand either of you.
Go, Miles.
We put the rant back into GeekRant.
There we go.
Yeah, we did make up for that. And remember my call to action from earlier in the show, which would you rather see? Snake killers or convicted felons have a chance for life? Surely we can get some comments out of that.
So I have clearly, distinctly, and repeatedly implored you to tell me what you think using the multiple methods available to you. So if I don't get any email in the next couple of weeks, I have no choice but to assume you are mindless and you don't think anything.
And we need to tell them what to think, much like every other corporate entity in America. We are doing it wrong, Mark.
Yeah, I guess instead of fostering independent thought, we just need to come on here and tell you what to think. So if I don't get any response, I'll know that that's the way the show needs to go in the future. Instead of trying to have intellectual debate, we'll just come on and tell you what to think. And the first thing I'll tell you is go to patreon.com/elementop and give me money. You think you want to give me money. This is an important thing. This is a deeply held personal belief for you, and you need to do it. Pseudo, go and give me money at patreon.com/elementop. All right, I'm
fun show tonight.
I've run out of useful things to say. I've even run out of useless things to say. So there's nothing else to say, but pay for what you like. Good night, everybody, because that's it for this episode of the GeekRant.
Toodaloo.
Ciao.
Yeah, we should take a week off more often. We were all rejuvenated when we came back.
Yeah. Oh my God. I dusted off my tinfoil hat.
I tried, man. I tried to stir some stuff up there. So
but it's good. It's good. Let's see if we get some response. Somebody's going to start hauling in comment on something.
One would think.
Yeah.
I hope so. because that I don't know what would really be cool is to get somebody to be a guest because they had some angle we hadn't thought of. That would be really cool.
That would be good.
You heard it here, YouTube people. That's the final call for action. Put your mouth where your money is, or something like that. So I'm cutting you off now. There's no more goodness. That's it.